College football fans, what up? It's the one and only Cole Thompson here. And now with the transfer portal officially closed, we have a better baseline of where these rosters rank heading into 2024. Some are hellbent on making it to the national championship. Some are content with just going to the college football playoff. Others are going through a rebuilding year, looking forward to 2025 and beyond. And then you have those middle tier teams, the ones who are in kind of a prove it situation. Can we actually achieve greatness, or are we just another middle of the pack team? And I figured today, let's go through and talk about those prove it teams for 2024. But if you're new here, welcome on into the channel, people. We talk college football every single day. So like, rate, review, leave a thumbs up, comment down below. Who do you think is the prove it team of 2024? And hit subscribe, because we're going to be talking about college football every day leading up to week 1 and well into the 2024 season, a season of chaos and craziness. Make sure that you're also following me on social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you got social media, I got you covered at Mr. Cole Thompson. Same name for every single platform. And while you're at it, make sure you tell your friends, your family, your mortal enemies, best of bros, college football aficionados everywhere about this channel, because we're not only trying to become the #1 YouTube show talking about our favorite sport, but also the #1 college football community on YouTube. That is priority number 1 for me, people. So just to make sure that you know that, if you have a question that you want read live on air and turn into a one-off video, make sure that you email me at colethompsonwriting@gmail.com or slide into the DMs on Twitter. I love interacting with fans. Prove it teams for 2024. To me, what this means is you are a team that either overachieved expectations last year, underachieved expectations last year, and have to either live up to the hype or prove that last year was a fluke, or you did enough this offseason to where people are starting to put a little bit of you on a pedestal, and it might be too soon to have the wagon before the horse. I had 2 rules when it came to this. Number 1, if you are changing conferences, automatically you get a bye from me. So Texas, Oklahoma, Washington, Oregon, you won't need to have great years in the Big Ten and in the SEC, but I will give you a pass because of its change, its adaptability. You got to be able to grow a little bit before you can actually hit your stride. And rule number 2, you got a new head coach, you get a pass. Because I'd love to talk about Texas A&M. Can they actually live up to the hype of being a top 10 program with top 10 resources? But they hired Mike Elko, so you get a pass. Same thing goes for Duke. Same thing goes for Washington. Same thing goes for replacing Nick Saban at Alabama, of all places. 16 years at the helm. You think that you're not going to have a little bit of trepidation? You get a bye from me, at least for year 1. So let's talk about the other teams that don't get a bye from me. Miami, plain and simple. I have no idea what they put in the water in Coral Gables, but so far it has been blossoming, and they may have the fountain of youth because they've rejuvenized themselves overnight. I've called Miami the breakout team of 2024 for 2 years now. After a 5-7 finish, I started comparing them to Texas, how Texas had to establish a culture, build a baseline in recruiting, and then start working the transfer portal in their favor. Well, what did Miami do the last 2 years? They established a culture, they built a full ground in recruiting, top 10 classes, and now, much like Texas last season, they've gone into the portal and added in premier players that can elevate their squad. Whether it be Cam Ward, whether it be Damian Martinez, whether it be Sam Brown, all really good plug-and-play additions to this team, but they also added in a ton of defensive talent. Guys like Jalen Ackerman, guys like Simeon Barrow potentially coming on over from Michigan State. There is so much optimism in Coral Gables. It's like Christmas morning. You have the present, and you've been waiting for this gift years, and now it's finally arrived. Your schedule bodes really well for you in the second half. All you got to do is get past Louisville, get past Florida State, which the game is at home, and you might have a shot at going to the college football playoff. But if you don't, well, here we are with Miami. We've been waiting to see the Miami of old finally come back. We've been waiting to see Miami of old, the U actually make it stand. You may have to go ahead and start putting a pin in that and going, we're a good team. We're just a good team. We're never going to be back to what we once were. It was a fun era of college football for us, and it was a great moment for us as fans to be able to eclipse what was a euphoric praise. But unfortunately, with this roster, with this much talent, a great offensive line, good backfield, exceptional defense, and we're still finishing 8-4, something is just not adding up here. And it's not the boosters, and it's not the NIL, and it's not even the coaching. It's just simply we're not at the same level as those other schools. So it's a must-win year, in my opinion, for Miami. Ohio State, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because Ohio State last year, I think, met expectations. They were supposed to be an 11-win team. They were an 11-win team. They lost one regular season game to the eventual national champions. They lost to Missouri after losing their starting quarterback because he entered the transfer portal. There was going to be a little bit of trepidation there. There was going to be a little bit of hesitation there. They also didn't have their number one wide receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. They return over 82% of their starting talent. They bring back Emeka Ibuka. They bring back Travion Henderson. They bring back Jack Sawyer. They bring back JT Tuimalau. They bring back Denzel Burke. They bring back Donovan Jackson. Their roster is loaded. And then they went out in the transfer portal, and not only did they get the number one player in Caleb Downs, they got the number one running back in Quinshon Judkins. They got the number one recruit in Jeremiah Smith, and they got the number one recruit transfer portal quarterback in Julian Sain. You hear what I'm saying? This is a team that has no excuse, especially now when you look at the other teams in the Big Ten, you look at your schedule, and you look at Michigan. Michigan, you haven't lost 3 times to them since the last time they won a national championship in 1997. And they don't have their head coach or their quarterback or a ton of their defensive talent because they all just went pro. This is a year where it is feeling like college football playoff or bust. It is feeling like win multiple playoff games or show yourself to the door, Ryan Day. It needs to be a new era in Columbus. That's the case when it comes to Ohio State. They have no excuse with a top 5 defense returning, with an offense that might upgrade with Will Howard at quarterback and a tandem that might be terrorizing the Big Ten. There's no excuse for what Ohio State should be. Now, what they can be is a national champion, but what they should be is a college football playoff contending roster that doesn't have too many flaws. Because of right now, with this veteranship, they should be in one sympathetic action. Florida. The reason I put Florida on this list is because of Billy Napier has got to prove that there is progress. That's it. I don't think anybody out there would look at this schedule up and down and say, I can find 8 wins. I don't think anybody could do 6 wins. I'm not sure many people could do 5 wins. I can do 1 win. 1 guaranteed win. Samford. But is there progress? Are you watching yourself play better on special teams? Is your defense not being caught in the middle of a rock and a hard place and jumping off sides, having too many pass interference calls? Is your offensive line stable, secure? You just add in the USC offensive lineman today. So how does that translate to a team actually closing out games? Last season, it didn't feel like there was progression in Gainesville. It felt like there was more so an idolization. This is a year where now you've added in some more talent. You have a veteran quarterback in Graham Mertz. You still have a good run game, headlined by Montrell Johnson. They have really good running backs that just haven't seen the field, but they're still talented as all hell. Your defense is going to improve, even though you lose guys like Princely Uwin-Manley-Yellen and Scooby Williams, because you also replace the coaching staff. I'm not saying you have to get to 10 wins. I'm not even saying for Florida to get to 8 wins. You go 7-5, that in most years with this schedule that not even college football Satan himself could create and think that that was good enough to be a part of Dante's Inferno, that schedule, 7 wins might be good enough to be considered like 9. That's what you have at your disposal. And so for me, when I look at a team like Florida, I just want to see results moving forward. Because Billy Napier, the one thing that you hear about him when he was at Louisiana was his ability to create something out of nothing. His ability to take a team and expand its horizons past what it was expected. I'm not expecting Florida to be a college football playoff contender. I am expecting them to act like a year 3 team underneath the coach that at this point is facing a seat that's hotter than hell itself. Missouri, I have them on this list because I want to see what you are. What are you this year? Are you a team that actually can build off of last season? 11-2, great offensive execution, good overall balance on defense. Can you build off that? Because I think Missouri can be a sleeping giant in the SEC. You look at the way that they recruit, you look at the way that they have worked the transfer portal, they could be what Ole Miss is right now. Ole Miss, the thing about them that stands out is they're always going to be top 25 in recruiting, but they're always going to be top 5 in the transfer portal. And the reason why is because Ole Miss goes after players that are proven commodities that can come in immediately and be X factors. And I feel like Missouri's doing that right now. Marcus Bryant, Caden Green, the fact that you were able to go get Marcus Carroll from Georgia State. You added in high-profile names that are going to be plug-and-play additions at areas of weakness that should be areas of strength. And your schedule, you may have the easiest pathway to the postseason in the SEC. And then you look at the returning talent from Brady Cook, from Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, the interior offensive line. Yeah, you lose Darius Robinson and you lose Ennis Rakestraw, but you bring in other players with experience. The Clemson cornerback, you have names. What more do you need to prove this year? It's that you could actually be alongside the tier 2 teams in the SEC. Can you be a team like Texas A&M? Can you be a team like Ole Miss? Can you be a team like Tennessee? Can you beat those teams on the regular too? Because if as of right now, there's one loss chalked up on the schedule, and I don't know if it's Alabama just yet. I do think that you are a team that is 11-1, and 11-1 is good enough to get you to Atlanta. Notre Dame, listen, the college football playoff this year is predicated towards Notre Dame. And what I mean by that is every season you get to 11-1, you're not leaving Notre Dame out. The one thing that we can promise ourselves when talking about the college football playoff, they are always going to want the high-profile teams, the ones that bring in the ratings, the ravenous fan bases, those that are going to fill stadiums regardless of location. Notre Dame can be that. And Notre Dame, so long as they have a roster that ranks top 25 in every single metric, offensively, defensively, good balanced attack, they're going to be mentioned. You bring over Mike Denbrock. That is a must-win for the passing attack. You bring over Riley Leonard. That's a second element, similar to what you had with Jaden Daniels down at LSU last year. And now you're combining them together to join forces and create this DNA strand of offensive consistency that felt like it was missing last year with Sam Hartman. They ran Audric Estime into the ground. And Audric Estime is now running it high in the Mile High City with Denver. You don't have that second win right now. You could, but do you have enough to where, yes, our offense is going to counteract our defense, and we're going to be a top 25 unit on both sides of the football to where we don't have to worry about wondering what could have been if we had to go ahead and not lose to Ohio State. What could have been if we got one final stop? Would we have been a contending team in the college football playoff? That's where Notre Dame is. I think if they can absolutely be a team every single year mentioned in the CFP, they could be a team that wins the national championship with Marcus Freeman. But this is the year where you got to prove, yes, we are actually on the come up. Let's go down south to the state of Texas. Baylor, they got to be mentioned. Dave Aranda at one point was one of the hottest coaches on the market. At one point, Baylor fans were scared they were going to lose Dave Aranda to USC. And USC needed to get a big-time hire. There was no one bigger in 2021 than Dave Aranda. What he was able to do in 2 seasons at Baylor was phenomenal. Well, since then, he hasn't been able to get above 500. He's had countless players enter the transfer portal. He's revamped his entire offense. He's lost his starting quarterback. And even though he's been able to get some good names, Daquan Finn comes over from Toledo. You bring over Jake Spavital from Texas State. You feel good. But now I feel like you have to prove that this offense is not going to be a problem. There's always been a few times where loyalty gets you in trouble. Les Miles is one of the biggest reasons for this with Cam Cameron. You end up holding out hope for people on your staff that you know you need to let go of for your sake. Unfortunately, it's not him being shown the door. It's the two of you being shown the door. And for Baylor, I don't want to see change that much. I love Dave Aranda as a person. I think that he is one of the more insightful minds in college football. But eventually, with the new changes coming to the Big 12, this is an opportunity for the Baylor Bears to be a big-time threat in the Big 12. If you can't go ahead and make these necessary adjustments, change is inevitable, and it could be coming to change in Waco in the not-so-distant future. West Virginia, the surprise team of college football last year, Neil Brown, in my opinion, is allowed to go to this year's Big 12 Media Days and enter flipping off everybody. He can give a double bird smile with the biggest eaten grin as humanly possible, and he's earned it. Because last year, West Virginia, with newcomers in Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, and you also got there on BYU, they were projected to finish last. They went 8-4. They had 8+ wins last year, and they found ways to beat up on everybody. They got hot at the very start of the season. They cooled at the midway point to where we took them out of the Big 12 championship. But then they got really hot at the season's end, and Neil Brown deserved a lot more accolades than just Big 12 Coach of the Year. He did, and he didn't even win that. You look at West Virginia, though, what will you be? Now it's a brand new era of Big 12 football. You bring back Garrett Green. You bring in another running back. You have a good rushing attack in Morgantown this year. Your defense looks a lot better than I think expected. How do you transition that into a legit threat of the Big 12? Because if I think Neil Brown's a damn good coach, but is he a good coach at the group of 5 level, or is he a good coach, period? This will be a year where we define it. He got a new contract extension, so I don't know if he will be shown the door, but I do think that West Virginia, at this point, they can end up being a very special team. You got to be able to prove it on the field every single week. Tennessee, let's go to the Volunteer State. The Volunteers, in my opinion, the reason they're here, this offense is finally going to be what Josh Heupel always envisioned. That's the bottom line, and it starts with the quarterback. I am not going to put pressure on Nico Iamaleava to live up to this generational wealth hype of has to be the next Peyton Manning, has to lead just like T. Martin to a national championship, has to get to the college football playoff. But I am expecting him to be the leader, catalyst, and point guard of this offense that finally could reach new heights of what Heupel's always envisioned. Because every single piece that's been added in was added in by Heupel. You had to suffer. Let me rephrase that. Suffer's not the right word, because Hendon Hooker was phenomenal. Hendon Hooker was arguably the best quarterback in the SEC in 2022. But you had to understand that this quarterback room was not picked by Heupel. These were players that had committed to Jeremy Pruitt. They stuck around, they fought through, and eventually they decided that I'm going to stay a part of this team. And guess what? You ended up going to an Orange Bowl appearance. You end up going 8-4. Well, now this is your quarterback. These are your wide receivers. You picked Chris Brazzell out of the transfer portal. You picked Holton Staes as your tight end out of the transfer portal. This is your offensive line. You added in Lazance Hurd from LSU. You added in these players. This is a team that absolutely can go to the college football playoff. But more importantly, the biggest thing that I take away, you have to prove that this offense can reach new heights. Because, yeah, you don't have as good as a run game now that you don't have Jabari Small and Jalen Wright, but you still have Dylan Sampson. You still feel good about your backfield overall. It's got to prove that this can be a year where, yes, this offense can be what it is. Penn State, nut up or shut up. I'm sorry. There's no other way to put this, in my opinion. James Franklin, you should be on the hottest seat. And I know that sounds really harsh. That sounds very cruel when it comes to a guy that does have a great understanding of what state college is. But in my opinion, 10-2 is not going to cut it anymore. And if 10-2 is going to cut it, it cuts it by losing to a team that you're not supposed to and beating a team that you probably shouldn't have. That's the way I view 10-2 at this point. You can't go ahead and hold out and say, we're content losing to Michigan and Ohio State every year. And by the way, your schedule, it is extremely favorable. 10-2 is not going to be fine for me if you think that beating up on just the lackluster teams and being that premier tier 2 school counts for something. Yes, you lose some weapons in the offense and in the transfer portal. Yes, you bring over a really good potential number 1 wide receiver in Julian Fleming. Yes, you have a quarterback that I think will be elevated in the passing attack because of your new hire at OC and Andy Kolenicki. But still, when is this enough? You have the right coaches. You have the right defense. You have the right run system. You have a good offensive line. You have stability in every area of the field besides wide receiver. And still, you're content with double-digit wins and going to a reasonable bowl game. No, that shouldn't be Penn State's aura. Penn State, in my opinion, is that other outside school that belongs in the conversation for blue bloods. They do, because if they have the pageantry, the ambiance, the consistency, but they don't have the wins to back it up. And James Franklin is not a coach that should be settling for 10-2. He shouldn't. Oh, yeah, we beat up on Illinois, Michigan State, Indiana, and then we lose to Ohio State and Michigan. Okay, wash, rinse, repeat. When is change inevitable? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Well, right now, Penn State fans are living in the insane part of conversations simply because you look at this team, they should be competitive. They should be able to hold their own against a Michigan, against an Ohio State, and they don't. They fall apart in the second half, and they're unable to sustain that success and that momentum that they gained in that first quarter. How do you get to that level? Because until you do, this is where it's hard for me to start believing in Penn State. And much like Miami, at some point, we got to go ahead and just put that pin in and say, it had a good run. They had a good run, but we know what Clemson is. I mean, we know what Penn State is. We know what Miami is. They're just teams that are going to probably fight for a college football playoff spot. And if not, oh well. Speaking of the next team, Clemson. Listen, this has nothing to do with the on-field play. This has nothing to do with the communication when it comes to what Dabo's future looks like. This has everything to do with philosophy. Dabo's been a believer for years that if you don't buy into Clemson from the get-go, they're not going to buy into you later. It's why he doesn't trust the transfer portal. It's why he doesn't go out of his way to make the adjustments when it comes to adding in talent. They haven't had a 1,000-yard receiver in 3 years. That's a problem at a place known as wide receiver U. Their defense, it's been formidable, but they have been losing a step year after year since Brent Venables departed for Norman. They have to show that if their beliefs work a certain way, they will transpire in results. And it's good if you want to go 9-3, but much like the expectations have changed out in Tuscaloosa, how they've changed in Oxford, how they changed in other locations across college football, it's because of who's leading the charge. Dabo doesn't settle for 10-win years. If you don't make the college football playoff at Clemson, it's almost at the same level as Alabama. And they haven't been for 3 seasons. So for me, this all comes down to Dabo's philosophies. If he doesn't want to make changes, so be it. Then the university has to do it instead. You can't be holding out hope and thinking that eventually things will transpire and change for the better when clearly there's a separation of power and there's a separation of consistency. Last team for you, Oklahoma State. I don't know what to make of the Cowboys this year, but here's what I do know. This could be their conference. Now with the new flagship coming on in, it's got to be somebody. And it has to be someone with a proven coach, with a proven track record, and the ability to get to the next level. Oklahoma State was 2 plays away from making it to the college football playoff 2 years ago. Last season, they were right back in the likes of they were right back in the likes of Arlington for the Big 12 championship. They have talent. You know how to recruit. You know what type of sustainability can be brought in by Mike Gundy. But at some point, when you don't go out and you fortify your passing attack by adding in a premier wide receiver, when you trust an 8-year veteran who's going for AARP and his doctorate in college football with Alan Bowman, and you have a good rushing attack, arguably the best running back in college football with Ollie Gordon, this is where you're supposed to attack. This was a year where you could have gone out and done wonders in the portal, added in premier players, get better in terms of the consistency on the offensive line. You did none of that. So for me, it's a prove-it year because if Gundy is not willing to make those changes, similar to a Dabo Swinney, similar to a Jimbo Fisher, similar to a Les Miles, at some point change is inevitable. And for me, Oklahoma State could easily be that sleeping giant in the Big 12 that makes it to a college football every single year. The water right now is still in Stillwater, but it's got to start getting a little bit more ravenous once the regular season rolls around. If they can get up to Arlington, they're going to be a playoff team. They're going to be a threat every single year, or they're going to fall back in the middle tier and watch as Utah, UCF, Arizona, and countless other schools surpass them en route to hopefully making it to their own college football playoff. Those are my prove-it teams for 2024. Who are your prove-it teams for 2024? Like, hit subscribe down below. Leave a comment telling your thoughts on which team needs to live up to expectations in 2024. And make sure that you're following me on social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you see fit, at Mr. Cole Thompson. Download whatever app that you have to keep up with everything that we're doing here on this channel, because we're talking college football every single day leading up to week 1. And of course, make sure you tell your friends, your family, mortal enemies, best of bros, college football aficionados, and countless people everywhere, because we're on the race to become the #1 content and the #1 college football community here on YouTube. I'm Cole Thompson. Until next time, college football fans, later.